So I'm typically using these headphones for gaming, the HiFiMan Ananda V2s. It's a really nice pair of open back headphones, but you know, as good as these sound, they can get a bit hot and uncomfortable after a few hours, especially in the summer. And that's when I switched to IEMs. On a hot day, nothing beats the comfort of IEMs. And I have a few different IEMs that I like using, but this one here, the EPZ G20, completely transformed my audio setup. Sounds a bit dramatic to say that about a $50 pair of IEMs, but it's true. See, the G20 comes with a pretty special cable. For one, it has a detachable boom mic built in, and that alone isn't something you see every day. There are a few other IEM cables that have integrated boom mics, like this one from Canera, but getting one included with a pair of IEMs that cost roughly $50 is pretty nice. And then there's the connector. It's USB-C, meaning the DAC and ADC are already built into the cable. And that's a huge plus, because for the other cable, you either gotta have a dedicated interface with a mic input, or plug it straight into your motherboard, which is something I really wouldn't recommend for sensitive IEMs. You get a ton of hiss and hum, and likely gotta deal with other issues as well, like a high output impedance and random noises and stuff. So you basically gotta get a device like this. And you know, this might be a me problem, but I like to keep as few things on my desk as possible, so I've been putting this interface away in a drawer whenever I wasn't using it, which got a bit annoying. So you can imagine how glad I am that these IEMs have everything built in. I just gotta plug them into my PC and I'm good to go. So on convenience alone, this setup already is a huge win for me. But you know, with products that are trying to be everything at once, you're likely gonna make some trade-offs somewhere. I mean, this whole setup comes in at only $50 something. Even if it was just these IEMs with their regular cable, this would be considered a budget pair of IEMs. But the G20 also comes with the second cable with an integrated DAC, ADC and boom mic, and this even has DSP built in. So yeah, it surely packs a lot of features. But what about the sound quality? Is the mic any good? And is this even a good pair of IEMs to begin with? Okay, the party trick of the G20 surely is this boom mic. And the mic quality is actually pretty easy for me to demonstrate. Here's what it sounds like with no effects applied. I just matched the volume with my lav mic. Unfortunately, the boom mic is not very directional, so it catches a bit of room echo and also keyboard sounds. So I've been using NVIDIA Broadcast to get rid of that. And it's actually quite effective. I don't think you can hear a lot of keyboard now. So the end result sounds pretty good to me, and I certainly haven't had a single teammate complaining about the mic. And on the listening side of things, I personally really like the sound quality I'm getting from these IEMs. Now, the first thing you'll notice when plugging these in is a faint hissing sound from the DAC that's integrated into the cable. It's a bit unfortunate, but it's really not a huge deal and almost impossible to notice as soon as you're playing some audio. I wish it had a lower noise floor, but I'm also very spoiled by my RME DAC, keep that in mind. Anyway, it's a non-issue once you start playing some audio, and for the money, I'm very happy with how these sound. The sound profile itself is very mainstream, you could say. It's your typical slightly elevated bass and elevated treble kind of sound that works great for most types of music, games or media. It's close to the Harman Target curve, which is a sound profile a lot of people like. And I like it too. It reminds me a lot of two other IEMs that I use on a regular basis. The Patsmith IEM and the Pula PA02. They have very similar tunings, but both IEMs sound a bit more refined than the G20 when listening to music. The Pula PA02 in particular is a good step up from the G20, but it's also almost 3 times the price, so that's somewhat expected. For gaming though, the G20 is just as good as the other two. I've been switching back and forth between the G20, the Pula and the Patsmith a lot, and when it comes to pinpointing the location of enemies, the G20 is just as good as the more expensive IEMs. Footsteps are easy to place, it separates steps from gunfire pretty well, and you can tell whether sounds are coming from behind a wall or not. And that's with the stock tuning, which works pretty well for gaming really, but to be honest, I've been using it with EQ most of the time. I might be a bit out of touch, but it's kinda insane to me that this cable has an 8-band parametric EQ built in. And with this, you can make these IEMs sound a lot better with minimal effort. I've been using some EQ settings that aim to emulate the sound signature of much more expensive IEMs, and the results are great. It just takes a few clicks to make these IEMs mimic the frequency response of other IEMs, like for example the $3,000 IEMs that Tense is using for Valorant. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a second. Of course, you don't need this cable to EQ your IEMs. You could just use EQ software on your PC, but it's just super cool to have it stored on the cable. You can just take these to a different PC or use them on your phone, and they still sound the same. The way you can configure these is actually pretty nice too. They have this web interface, just like you find with a lot of keyboards and mice these days, so you don't need to download and install anything. Here you can also dial in some manual EQ settings, but I've been using SquigLink instead. That are those websites that let you compare the frequency response graphs of IEMs and headphones, and the G20 is compatible with a device PEQ feature that lets you push the EQ settings you make on a Squig-based website directly to the cable via USB. So on Squig you can make your EQ settings while looking at the graphs and seeing the changes in real time, and then just send them over onto the cable. That's such a cool feature. What I've been doing a lot is using the graphs of other IEMs as targets and then let the auto EQ feature do its thing. It's pretty wild how good you can make the G20 sound this way. Now, currently not every Squig-based website supports the device PEQ feature, unfortunately. I think only Pragmatic Audio does at the moment. Pragmatic, though, only has a rather small database of IEMs, so I've been using the Aftersound Squig instead to make the EQs, and then Pragmatic to push them to the G20. You can just export the EQ settings on any Squig website, and then import them on Pragmatic Audio Squig to transfer them onto the G20. Just make sure you're using a maximum of 8 bands before you start the auto EQ. I also have some ready-made EQs in the video description for download if you want to give them a try. My personal favorite is this one that aims to make the G20 sound like the QDC Gemini. Doesn't make it sound exactly like the QDC Gemini, a $2,000 IEM. Well, I don't have the Gemini for a direct comparison, unfortunately, but it's kinda safe to assume that it doesn't. Even with the best EQ, these don't sound like $2,000 IEMs to me. But I gotta say they don't sound like $50 either. Sure, people have been equalizing their budget IEMs for ages now to make them sound like more expensive IEMs and ultimately to make them sound better. And you certainly don't need the G20 or a DSP cable to do this. There's freeware software like Equalizer APO that can do just the same, or even more actually. But it's the combination of this DSP cable, the detachable boom mic, and a capable pair of budget IEMs that makes the G20 special. It's really a one-and-done IEM gaming setup on a budget. It's not perfect though. A higher quality cable certainly wouldn't hurt, like a braided one would be nice. And this inline remote is a bit janky. It sometimes changes the volume on its own, which is a bit annoying. Also, a feature I've been missing a lot is side tone. These IEMs isolate quite well, so having low latency mic monitoring would be a huge plus. It's kinda hard to gauge how loud you're speaking when you don't hear yourself. An updated version that addresses these things would be amazing. And I also wouldn't mind a more high-end version of this, maybe combined with multi-driver IEMs and a better DAC. But honestly, even as it is now, I've been enjoying it a lot. Thanks for watching. Bis zum nächsten Video.